Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "My super entitled mother tried controlling me. I get my revenge for years of her bad behavior." So, I'm in my 20s and as is my significant other that I'll call fiancé for this post. Keep in mind I'm heavily disabled mentally and physically, important for later, due to certain reasons caused by my biological parents. I refuse to relive those events, so I won't say what happened to me during the time I lived with them growing up, but I will say my parents are divorced and hate each other. I have a service dog and she's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll call her Melly for this post to protect my privacy. Strap in for the ride, folks, because this is nuclear. Due to my physical disabilities and my mental illness that I had legally diagnosed by an actually certified professional, I receive federal aid because I am physically unable to work as a result. I've been receiving benefits and using them for the right purposes like my rent, getting my college loan paid off, and among other things I'm using it to afford my medications for my conditions. See, my mother is a firm disbeliever of mental illness and states that because she had a bad life no one else can suffer, and would always use that excuse with me. She was unfortunately the person that the government dubbed in control of my aid benefits. That was until I moved away eventually, when my now significant other helped me get out of that situation. During the time that I was with her, she wouldn't report to the government like she was supposed to. I even told her she had to. Her reply? "Why don't you report it yourself then?" Now I would, but the government doesn't want anything to do with me since I'm not the one that the government dubbed was in charge. I tried on multiple occasions to convince her, to no avail. That's when I tried myself. They literally asked me directly after getting my name for my representative, my mom, and cut me off as I was trying to explain the situation. When that failed, I tried going in person only to get met with, "We need to talk to your representative or they have to be present for you to speak to us." This is because my mental illnesses made me physically incapable of distinguishing reality from the psychosis episodes I randomly get. Shout out to fiancé for literally always being my anchor, and Melly too. So I could understand from their point of view. That did still kind of sting though. Imagine being told that because you have a mental illness that you're unable to be a functioning enough adult to speak to someone. I got penalized for lying to the government as a result of her stupid choice. See, the years that I lived with my mom, I wasn't told how much aid and benefits I was getting. I knew it was more than she told me since her and her boyfriend both always seemed to get expensive things like jewelry and new phones around the time of my payments. In short, the rule for my payment is that I can't have access to the money, but it has to be used for me, not her. The only other option I had other than magically getting better was to get kicked out of the house and end up homeless without my benefits. I needed those to treat my conditions though. My mother and her boyfriend also would hurt me a lot, steal my meds, etc. Fiancé learned the truth because I had a call up one day with him while I was cooking and he witnessed my mom coming in and placing my hand inside a burning hot pan and screaming about getting more money I don't deserve. It took everything in him to not lose it at her when he saw this. He began to monitor everything because I would just be on Discord or Skype call with him during these times, so we could start gathering evidence by me leaving my phone on record the same time as the call whenever I saw her enter the same room as me. The nuclear revenge. One of the ways my mother tried to tie me to her was she would get me in debt with anyone and everyone she could, such as doctor appointments, college, etc., by stealing the cash that I had hidden from her to pay for those things. She was clearly also using my benefits for herself, which is against the law since it's meant for me. So fiancé, being the amazing man he is, he saved up money from his job and his active duty pay. He got me out of debt while keeping our evidence complied and ready. The day freedom came, I snapped because she tried getting rid of Melly. After about 2 years of saving and biting the bullet, fiancé paid off my biggest debt, so I was able to have enough room to be able to move out. He had me move in with him. We then had all the recordings from the past 2 years and turned it all in. Social Security of course let me change my representative, So I then finally convinced them to switch the rep to being fiancé instead of her. During this time though, he was called to get stationed in a state that was very far away for his military duty, and Social Security approved and said it was okay since he had orders to go. The result? From what my older brother explained, Mom tried desperately to keep herself as my representative. She lost the money she was using for all her fancy things as well as her house. Yes, you read that right. She used my benefit money to pay for the house without telling me. She was found guilty of federal fraud and falsifying federal documents among other things. I don't know how long she got. I didn't bother asking because I just completely cut her out of my life. Note: my brother and I are on happily sibling-friendly terms and we talk a lot, and my condition has improved since I was able to start treatment without having someone get in my way. Fiancé is amazing, and acts like a caretaker for me. When I left my mom, I didn't tell her I was leaving either, or else she would have done literally anything including murder to try to get me to stay. Edit. The reason I didn't leave sooner was because it's hard to leave a situation with zero money on top of having a medical issue to treat. And despite her allowing me to live there, she charged me rent and didn't inform me how much money I was getting. If I left without doing anything, I would have fallen on my face and been unable to care for myself. Leaving a situation like this isn't as simple as one phone call and done, especially when you don't even know the full scope of what they're doing to you. I wasn't a minor when I found out about this, and she had legal guardianship so I could receive benefits in the first place. And yes, she did get charged with abuse. I just don't like saying that word, which is why I put, among other things, next one is titled. He told me I just have to deal with him, so I did. I work in a corner store. As expected, when working at a corner store, there are lots of thieves that we need to deal with. Most of them are told to leave and don't come back. Some come back after a few months but they don't steal anymore, but one man decided to be different. This guy is probably about 70 or older and comes in every day and steals something every time he's in. When confronted about it, he simply admits he stole and expects to be let off with no punishment. One day the boss caught him red-handed and told him he's not allowed back in. A couple days later he came back to apologize and said he won't do it again if he can still come in. So the boss agreed, but he printed out a sheet and told everybody to write down the times he comes in so the boss can look at it later. About a week goes by and sure enough, the boss confirms with us that he's still stealing when he comes in and instructed us to tell him he's not allowed on the property anymore. So we did, about 10 times. We were denying him service at this point, but he kept trying to use the ATM inside the store. We repeatedly told him he's not allowed, but we never really enforced it because we were usually busy and he would be gone by the time we had a minute to do something about him. He usually would say something like, "I'm still not allowed," or, "I'll just be a minute." One day he comes in and I immediately tell him loudly and clearly that he's not allowed in, and if he doesn't leave I'm calling the cops. He told me, "You'll just have to deal with me." So I called the cops and asked him what his name was, and he ran out the door before I was done on the phone. This wasn't over yet. Using the information I had about his browsing patterns in the store, I made a plan. I waited patiently for the day to come when he would come into the store when there was nobody else in the store but me, and I had no other obligations. Today was my lucky day. Today he came in and went straight to the ATM, so I immediately told him to get out now or I'm calling the cops. I locked up the safe and shut all the doors and locked them, then went outside and locked the store from the outside with him stuck inside. I called the non-emergency police line and they sent 2 units to write up a file stating that if he comes back he will be fined and possibly arrested. I told the police officer that we kicked him out like 10 times and he told me, "You'll just have to deal with me," so I did just that. The police ended up charging him with trespassing because he's on parole. Next one is titled, "Don't expect me to work 2 jobs for the wage of 1. A few years ago I worked at a major US supermarket. A common practice was, and probably still is, for the main bank of check stands to call for help from other departments when they got overwhelmed. I worked in the clothing department, which is to say, my job was not cashiering. At first, I was okay with it, but it came to be that every day I could expect to spend an hour or two away from my job running a check stand. And it was usually the same hours. The managers always said, "I'm not gonna get mad if you fall behind, just go up and check," whenever I voiced concerns about completing my own tasks, but that mentality seemed to be forgotten every time annual reviews came around. I came to the conclusion that the main bank of check stands was not overwhelmed. They just wanted to save money by not hiring cashiers. First, my reaction was to check customers as slowly as possible. Each hour was assigned to a specific person, and seeing as there was no way I'd be getting out before my hour was up, I wanted to make sure I was as useless as possible while doing that job. Oh golly gee, I'm pretty sure I know the produce code for bananas, but let me look in the codebook just to be sure. But eventually I stopped because the only one suffering was the customer. As a retail employee, that usually doesn't bother me, but in this specific scenario the customer was not the target of my frustrations. From that point on, I gave every customer that came through my line a discount equal to my hourly wage, around $13. The only exception would be if a customer bought less than $13 worth of merchandise. A 100% discount would raise too many flags, in which case I still gave them some kind of discount. And I would usually check out around 15 to 20 people an hour. I never told customers about the discount because I didn't want them to try and return the favor by leaving us a good review or something. A few times a nosy customer would notice me typing something into the register and be like, "What are you doing?" And I would respond with, "Management is trying to save money by making me responsible for 2 jobs, and I'm doing my best to negate any gains they make by giving you a discount you otherwise wouldn't have gotten," which usually got a response of, "Oh. Carry on." At that time, a discount under $20 per transaction did not flag anything and I was never talked to about it. I continued this practice for roughly 2 years before I quit. Next one is titled, "Taught a Food Thief a Lesson." I worked at a small company with approximately 35 employees. We had a good-sized kitchen with a fridge that several employees used, though most brought a lunch bag they just kept by their desk. The fridge was usually used for stuff that people wanted to keep really cold or for drinks. People often would go to the fridge to find either their whole lunch missing or an item from it gone, or in my case my can of cherry Coke. I usually kept it in my lunch bag, but on occasion when I would order out I would get 2, one for lunch and one for later, so I didn't have my lunch bag. We suspected who was stealing but could never prove it, but this particular day I was in mood and I figured I would try and prove it. It was Karen's break time and I headed down to the kitchen about 5 minutes ahead and gave my Coke a really hard shake. So hard I feared it may actually pop in my hands, and placed it back in the fridge. Then I ducked into the storage closet that was in the kitchen and peeked out the crack. Bingo! She took the Coke. I waited hand over my mouth for her to open it, but she took it with her and left. Oh crap, I thought she was gonna open it in the hall. Nope. As I left the kitchen I hear her yell, "What the duck?" As I passed her office, Coke was everywhere, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, all over her desk and computer, and her work all over her everywhere. More importantly, the previous week we were all given these sippy type cups that were spill-proof that we were supposed to use at our desks when drinking because we all got new computers. Well, food never went missing again because she got fired. Next one is titled, "Threaten Me, Dorm Staff, with Violence?" By Felicia. Okay, so I'm an RA at state school, which is basically half community building and half policy enforcement. Now, of late we've mostly given up on enforcing mask policy because the people who don't wear them really don't give a duck, but this happened last semester when we were still enforcing things. So I was on rounds. Basically check the building over and see if there's anyone making trouble or needing help. And when I get to the 2nd floor, I see this dude walk in with no mask talking on FaceTime with no headphones. I, of course, say that he should put a mask on. He supposedly doesn't hear me. And while I'm looking at him waiting for a response, he goes to the other guy on FaceTime. Man, if that ducker doesn't stop looking at me weird, I'ma beat their butt. I fire back with an, "I'm in raw and I just said you need to put a mask on. Now I need your ID to write this incident up." The guy goes, "Oh, my bad, didn't hear you," then books it for his room. He gets in, then closes the door, and when I knock repeatedly, he doesn't answer. I go, duck it, and proceed to take his room number down. Then I tell my boss and submit an incident report. My boss goes through the normal conduct meeting process with him, and he ends up kicked out of the dorm because come on, you can't just threaten people with violence and expect nothing to happen. My only regret is that I wasn't able to see his face at the meeting. Last one is titled, "A job recruiter practically harassed me, made her look bad in front of companies." This might be harsh that she might lose her job, but this woman is not meant to be a job recruiter the way she had used me as a colleague. I applied for a job one morning and then the same night, she called me at 8 p.m. I was shocked that they are still working and making calls. She asked me if I can do an interview next week and going to need my resume sent to her. I obliged to do so but still confused that she called me so late but just went on to send her my resume. I had trouble handling my dog and cooking so I stalled a little bit from sending it. Maybe half an hour or so later, I sent my resume but looked at my phone, set on silent, to find over 10 missed calls. I was really shocked to find it was from the recruiter. She texted me asking where the resume is and such. I called her back and expressed my concern that it is 8 p.m. and she caught me off guard that she called so late. She apologized claiming she's in a different time zone and thought it was appropriate. I thought about this the whole week how annoyed I was that she practically harassed me. Then the morning of the phone interview, it was scheduled to start at 12 p.m. It was 7 a.m. and I have gotten a call from the recruiter again. I was half asleep and again, she called me maybe 3 more times, I still don't know why. I was so fed up that I picked up the call and told her that I found another job and won't be needing this interview. She was probably shocked and asked what is their compensation and I said I am not obliged to answer, then hung up. I was so infuriated she ruined my morning. I also wondered if the interviewer would call me and they actually did. On the spot, I told them that I rejected this offer a few days ago and really sorry the recruiter didn't notify them. The interviewer was caught off guard and said, "Oh, wow, sorry to bother you. Don't know if she lost her job but I really hope she did for bothering me so much. Thanks for listening."